Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to recenter a offset steering wheel. So we're in a different car today. It's my wife's new used Kia Cerato Sport Plus 2017 model. The previous owner recently had new tyres fitted to it. I'm not sure whether an alignment was done, but if it was, the technician failed to center the steering wheel before performing the adjustments. So when you're driving down the road straight, the wheel is offset to the left, as you can see here. Although it's a bit of a nuisance and it would be nice if technicians could do their job properly, this is a fairly simple fix that you can do at home. So let's go. So looking at the front of the car, we'll just come around to the front passenger side, and depending on how low your car is, you may need to jack it up from the front center so that both wheels are in the air. But thankfully this car is high enough that I can actually get underneath. Alright, so under the car, front left wheel, we've got the tie rod here. We need to loosen this nut. And then you need to keep this nut loose, but not so loose that it actually kind of rattles around, because you'll need to use this as a reference point for when you actually turn the tie rod. So for the left hand side, with the steering wheel offset to the left, we need to turn this anti-clockwise and the front right clockwise. So this will actually bring the tie rod out from the center of the car. and turning the front right tie rod clockwise will bring the tie rod towards the center of the car, and in doing so center the steering wheel. So I'll show you now. Alright, it's a crude diagram, but it will have to do. So just imagine we're sitting in the car, we've got the steering wheel here, it's offset to the left, okay, and we want to center it. We've got the two tyres, we've got the tie rods, front right, front left. Once you undo the nuts, the right hand side tie rod needs to be turned clockwise. So it's turning clockwise into the center of the car. The left hand side tie rod needs to be turned anti-clockwise. So it's going this way, away from the center of the car. And they both need to be turned equal distance. So for the distance that you turn, this one clockwise, this one must be turned the same distance anti-clockwise for the steering wheel to be centered and not to disrupt any other part of the alignment. And that's why there's a reference point on the tie rod which you can use for when you turn. So what I suggest you do, and I'll show you in a moment, is make very small incremental turns either side in equal measures until you can see the steering wheel centered. It also can help if you actually have the car running, so the power steering is operational, and therefore you'll actually witness the steering wheel recentering as you make these adjustments. So I'll give it a go now. I haven't done it on this car before. I've done it on my Magna a number of times, so I know kind of how far I need to actually turn these tie rods to get the wheel centered. On an Audi A1, my wife's previous car, it required a lot of turning, so it depends on the thread. Yeah, so anyway, we'll give it a go. Okay, I've loosened the nut here. Okay, on this particular car, it's larger than a 22mm, so I had to use an adjustable spanner, but it goes down ways, and on the driver's side it will go up ways in terms of which way you pull. I suggest putting one edge of the nut and align it to a point on the tie rod here, because when you start turning this, you need to note how far you've actually turned so that you can repeat on the other side equally. Okay. Alright, so we've undone the nut. I suggest lining an edge of the nut against the tie rod here, so you have a reference point, so that when you're turning this tie rod you can see how far you've turned it, so that you can repeat it on the other side equally. So I've just got it lined up there with a pencil mark. Can't really see it, but there's a pencil mark there, so that when I'm turning this I can see how far the nut is moving. I suggest very small incremental adjustments. I'll just turn the car on and I'll start making those adjustments. Okay, we're done. So that took a little longer than expected because I wasn't sure how far I had to turn the tie rods to get the wheels centered. I was benchmarking my Magna in terms of the distance that I was turning each one, but it required far more of a rotation on this particular car. So I think I turned each one probably 3/4 of a full rotation. Maybe not quite, but that's the thing, it depends on the car, so you just need to experiment. So I went for about 4 runs down the street and back until I got it to a point where I was happy, which is where it is right now. Just a couple of tips, depending on what side you're adjusting in terms of anti-clockwise, clockwise. On the right hand side, I had to use a vice grip to hold the tie rod in place while I tightened the nut, because as I was trying to tighten the nut, it was actually turning the tie rod and just undoing the adjustment. So I had to use a vice grip to hold one end of the tie rod still so I could do the nut up without undoing the adjustment, but the passenger side was fine. It just depends on whether you're adjusting a left hand or right hand down offset on your steering wheel. The other tip is to keep the car running. So keep the car running, and if you can help it, avoid jacking it up, because it's just a pain to have to jack it up, let it down, go for a test drive, come back, jack it up. So again, it depends on the car. Thankfully, this car and my Magna have enough ride height that I can just slide under and make those adjustments without having to jack it up. I think that's pretty much it. So if I forget anything, I'll put it in the description or in the comments. Any questions or comments, leave them below, and as always, thanks for watching. Cheers.